The year is 1904. You own a small refinery in western Pennsylvania. You've built it from nothing. You have contracts, customers, and workers who depend on you. Then one morning, a man in a suit arrives and explains very politely that Standard Oil has purchased the rail line you depend on to move your product. You can still operate, you can still produce, but every barrel you ship now passes through their infrastructure, at their price, on their schedule. You are not shut down, you're simply made dependent. Within 18 months you sell. Sounds like a cautionary tale from an economics textbook, right? A relic from the Gilded Age. Robber barons and railroad trusts and senators with oil money in their pockets. Ancient history. Here is the cold, hard reality. That story did not end. It updated. The refinery owner today is not in Pennsylvania. He's a startup founder in San Francisco who built an app, scaled it to 1 million users, and received a congratulatory email from the platform he built it on. Right before that platform launched an identical feature and buried his product in the algorithm. He does not own the rail line, he never did. We are living through a shift that happens maybe once every century. We are moving out of the era of the oil empire, control defined by pipelines, derricks, and tankers, and into the era of the data empire, where control is invisible, the resource is human behaviour, and the infrastructure runs directly through your attention span. Welcome to the new empire, and unlike the last one, you agreed to the terms and conditions. John D. Rockefeller was not the best oil producer in America. He was the best infrastructure owner. That distinction is everything. By 1882, Standard Oil controlled roughly 90% of the nation's refining capacity, not because Rockefeller's oil was superior, not because his workers were harder, but because he understood something his competitors never did. The product is irrelevant once you own the pipeline it travels through. His masterstroke was the secret railroad rebate. Standard Oil negotiated private discounts with the major rail carriers, paying less per barrel to ship than any competitor could. But Rockefeller went further. He negotiated what were called drawbacks, a cut of every barrel his competitors shipped on those same lines. His rivals were literally funding his expansion every time they tried to compete. They were pouring money directly into the engine designed to crush them, and they didn't even know it. This is the Rockefeller Doctrine, and it has never gone out of style. Control the choke point. Let everyone else believe they are operating freely. Collect a toll on every transaction that passes through your infrastructure, whether you produce that transaction or not. The moment you own the roads, you don't need to win every race. You just need to make sure every racer pays you to enter. The popular history of the Gilded Age reduces Rockefeller to a cartoon villain with a top hat and a monopoly board. That framing is comfortable because it places him safely in the past. The uncomfortable truth is that the Rockefeller playbook was never retired. It was studied, it was refined. And in the late 1990s, a new generation of builders picked it up, read it very carefully, and decided to run the exact same play. Only this time, the pipeline would be invisible, the resource would be infinite, and the toll booth would be disguised as a free service. For the first 2 decades of the commercial internet, Silicon Valley operated on a single assumption. Software is the product. You build it, you package it, you sell it. Microsoft sold Windows, Adobe sold Photoshop. The transaction was clean, comprehensible, and familiar. The business model was essentially a digital version of selling boxes at a store. Then Google happened, and more specifically, Google noticed something. In the early 2000s, Google's engineers were analyzing the residual data left behind by user searches, the queries, the click patterns, the dwell times, the corrections, and the abandoned searches. This was considered waste data, the exhaust of the actual product. Then someone asked a question that changed the architecture of the modern economy. What if the exhaust is the product? Researcher Shoshana Zuboff would later name what followed Surveillance Capitalism. The logic was breathtaking in its simplicity. Human behaviour observed at scale becomes predictable. Predictable behaviour can be packaged and sold to anyone who wants to influence a future decision. Advertisers, yes, but also insurers, lenders, employers, and eventually political campaigns. The shift was tectonic. Tech companies were no longer selling software to users, they were selling users to the market. The customer had not just become the product, they had become the raw material, the unrefined ore sitting just beneath the surface of every search, every click, every moment of digital hesitation. Silicon Valley had not invented a better mousetrap. It had discovered a new continent of extractable resources, and unlike oil, it never ran dry. Every minute a human being spent online was another barrel coming out of the ground. The drill was in, the gusher was open, and almost nobody noticed. Here is what the internet was supposed to be: a decentralized, open network where no single entity controls the flow of information. A commons, a public utility dressed in the language of freedom and democratization. That was the founding mythology, and for a brief window in the early 1990s, it was directionally true. Here is what the internet became: a small number of private highways owned by a handful of companies through which virtually all of modern commerce, communication, and culture must pass. Amazon Web Services currently powers an estimated 30% of the entire internet. Apple and Google together control the two operating systems running on over 99% of the world's smartphones. If you want to reach a mobile user, you are renting space in one of two stores, on one of two platforms, under one of two sets of rules, both of which can be changed without notice and appeal to no one. This is not a marketplace, this is a railroad, and the railroad owns the land on both sides of the tracks. The transcontinental railroad barons of the 19th century understood that the real prize was never the train, it was the right of way, the legal authority to lay track across a continent, to determine where commerce flowed and where it didn't, to grant or deny access based on loyalty and price. Jay Gould didn't need to own every business in America, he just needed to own the infrastructure that every business in America depended on. Look at the modern app economy, and the analogy becomes almost too precise. A startup builds a product. It distributes that product through the App Store, paying a 30% commission on every transaction, a figure that would have been called a railroad monopoly rate in 1890. It hosts its back end on AWS. It acquires its users through Google or Meta advertising. At every single choke point in its operational life, it is paying a toll to an infrastructure owner who did not build the startup's product, does not take on the startup's risk, and cannot be bypassed. The pipeline illusion is this: we tell ourselves that the internet is open because we can access it freely. But free access to the road is different from freedom on the road. You are free to drive, as long as you're willing to pay every toll, follow every rule, and accept that the highway can be closed at any time for any reason, with 30 days notice buried in a terms of service update you didn't read. In 2012, Facebook paid $1 billion for Instagram. Instagram had 13 employees and zero revenue. By any conventional business logic, the price was absurd. By Rockefeller logic, it was cheap. Instagram was not acquired because it was profitable. It was acquired because it was a threat vector, a competing platform for visual social content, growing faster than Facebook's own properties among younger demographics, with a simplicity and elegance that Facebook's engineers had failed to replicate internally. The acquisition did not add a business to Facebook's portfolio. It removed a future competitor from the board. Venture capitalists now openly refer to the area surrounding any major tech platform as a kill zone, a geographic radius of product categories where serious investment has dried up because the calculus is simple. If you build something that competes with, complements, or could one day threaten a platform giant, you will either be acquired on their terms or annihilated by their scale. There is no third outcome. The rational investor doesn't fund companies in the kill zone, because the kill zone doesn't produce independent companies. It produces acquisition targets or cautionary tales. Standard Oil ran the same operation without the Silicon Valley branding. Between 1870 and 1882, Rockefeller acquired or forced out over 40 competing refineries in Cleveland alone. The offers were rarely hostile in their language. They were simply clarifying, here is what we will pay you. Here is what happens if you decline. Most took the offer. The ones who didn't find their rail access suddenly unavailable, their credit mysteriously harder to come by, their customers quietly approached with better terms from Standard. The mechanism was different. The outcome was identical. The FTC's own internal research, leaked in 2020, found that Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft had collectively made over 600 acquisitions in the preceding decade. The majority were never reviewed for antitrust concerns. The majority were startups small enough to fall below the reporting thresholds that would trigger regulatory scrutiny. The kill zone is not a metaphor. It is a documented operational strategy. And unlike Rockefeller, who had to send men in suits to Pennsylvania refineries, The modern version requires only a term sheet and a wire transfer. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was designed to do one thing: protect consumers from monopoly pricing. The logic was straightforward. When a single company controls a market, it can charge whatever it wants. Consumers pay more. The solution is competition. The government enforces competition. End of story. The tech monopoly blew a hole through that framework so cleanly that the architects of the Sherman Act would not even recognize the problem being described. When the Department of Justice went after Standard Oil in 1911, it had a simple evidentiary task: show the court that Standard's monopoly raised prices for consumers. Show the receipts. The argument was mathematical and the remedy was structural. Break the company into pieces. Done. Now try to make that argument about Google. Google Search is free. Gmail is free. Google Maps is free. YouTube is free. By the consumer harm standard that has governed American antitrust enforcement for over a century, Google has caused no provable injury because the price of its products is zero. The framework that took down Rockefeller cannot touch a company that charges nothing and yet controls the information architecture of the entire economy. This is not an accident. The zero-price model was, among other things, a brilliant piece of regulatory judo. By making the product free, these companies placed themselves outside the perimeter of the only antitrust weapon the government had reliably used. The harm they cause is not measured in dollars at a checkout counter. It is measured in behavioral manipulation, privacy erosion, the systematic distortion of political information, and the quiet elimination of competitive markets in category after category. These harms are real and they are enormous, but they do not fit into a legal framework built for a world where monopoly power was expressed through price. The legal community has been slowly, painfully building a new evidentiary language, one centered on privacy harm, data harm, attention harm, and democratic harm. It is long overdue. And the companies that benefit from the old framework spend billions of dollars every year ensuring it stays the only framework that matters. OPEC was founded in 1960 with a deceptively simple mandate. Member nations would coordinate their oil production to maintain price stability, which is a polite way of saying they would collectively limit supply to keep prices artificially elevated. No single member had to collude with another on a specific transaction. The cartel's power came from the structure, from the shared understanding that everyone at the table benefited from the same outcome. Now consider the digital advertising market. Google and Meta together capture roughly half of all global digital advertising revenue. They do not have a signed agreement to fix prices. They do not need one. The structure of the market does the work. Both platforms operate closed auction systems where the mechanics of bidding are opaque, where the advertiser cannot verify the results, and where the platform both sells the inventory and sets the rules of the marketplace. This is not a competitive market. It is a toll booth with a scoreboard that only the toll collector can read. Internal documents from Google, surfaced in a 2023 antitrust case, described a program called Project Bernanke, a system that used historical bidding data from Google's own advertising exchange to give Google's buying tools an undisclosed advantage over competitors. The advertiser paying to reach you was playing poker against an opponent who could see their hand. The rates stayed high, the competition stayed suppressed, and the companies whose ads you see every day paid a premium to operate inside an attention economy whose price signals were quietly being managed from the inside. The parallel to oil is not rhetorical decoration, it is structural. OPEC controls the supply of a physical commodity that the global economy cannot function without. The attention cartel controls the supply of human cognitive focus, the finite, non-renewable resource that every advertiser, every publisher, every political campaign, and every entertainment platform is competing to purchase. When a cartel manages that supply, the consequences are not limited to advertising rates. They shape what information reaches you, what emotions are profitable to amplify, and whose message gets boosted based on who can afford to pay the premium. That is not an ad market. That is infrastructure for manufacturing consent. In 2022, the tech industry spent over $70 million lobbying the federal government. That number sounds enormous until you compare it to what came next. By 2023, that figure had climbed past $120 million. Meta, Amazon, Apple, Google, and Microsoft now rank consistently among the top lobbying spenders in Washington, having collectively displaced the pharmaceutical and fossil fuel industries from positions they held for decades. But the dollar figures miss the more elegant mechanism. The oil industry in its heyday did not merely lobby regulators, it staffed them. The movement of executives and attorneys between Standard Oil's legal team and the government bodies theoretically overseeing it was so constant that contemporaries called it the revolving door, a term we still use today because the door never stopped revolving. It simply acquired new tenants. The FTC, the body most responsible for tech antitrust enforcement, has seen a generation of its senior staff depart for positions at Amazon, Google, and Meta. This is not a conspiracy. It is an incentive structure. A mid-career government attorney with genuine expertise in platform economics is worth extraordinary money to the company she was just regulating. The company knows this. She knows this. The negotiation begins, if only implicitly, before she has submitted her resignation. The result is a regulatory apparatus that is perpetually several years behind the technology it oversees, staffed in its most critical positions by people whose career trajectory runs toward the industry they regulate, and funded at a fraction of the budget available to the legal teams they face across the table. The FTC's entire annual budget is roughly equivalent to what a single major tech company spends on lobbying in 18 months. This is not government failure. This is a market that the new empire has learned to operate as efficiently as any other. Rockefeller did not merely own the railroads, he owned the railroad commissioners. The infrastructure of the 21st century empire is not pipelines and refineries. It is PACs and think tanks, and endowed university chairs, and a pipeline of talent that ensures the people writing the rules grew up in the buildings of the companies those rules are meant to constrain. Crude oil is worthless. What gives it value is the refinery, the industrial process that takes a raw, undifferentiated substance and transforms it into aviation fuel, plastics, pharmaceuticals, and gasoline. The refinery is where the money is made, and the refinery requires a level of capital, expertise, and scale that most competitors simply cannot replicate. It is the choke point inside the choke point. Raw behavioural data operates by the same logic. The fact that you searched for running shoes at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday is, in isolation, unremarkable. But combine it with the fact that you searched for knee pain remedies the previous week, that your location data shows you haven't moved more than a quarter mile on most days in the last 3 months, that your social graph includes 17 people who recently purchased a specific brand of orthotics, and that your engagement patterns spike every time content about injury recovery appears in your feed. And now that data has been refined, it has been processed into a behavioural prediction, and that prediction is worth real money to the right buyer. The cognitive refinery is the recommendation engine, the ad auction algorithm, and the emotional contagion model. It is the industrial infrastructure that transforms human experience into a tradable asset. And like its petrochemical counterpart, it produces not just useful products, but byproducts, some of them toxic. Targeted political misinformation, algorithmically amplified outrage, the optimization of content not for truth or quality, but for the emotional responses that generate the most sustained engagement, because sustained engagement is what the refinery needs to keep running. When Facebook's own researchers found that their algorithm was amplifying divisive, emotionally triggering content because that content drove higher engagement rates, they were not discovering a glitch. They were reading the output of a refinery operating exactly as designed. The algorithm does not care what it does to you. It cares what it can extract from you. That is not a distinction with a moral dimension to the machine. It is simply the production function. And the product refined from your fear, your anger, and your longing is sold every day to every advertiser, every campaign, and every government willing to pay the market rate. In 1911, the Supreme Court ordered the dissolution of Standard Oil into 34 separate companies. John D. Rockefeller, who owned shares in all of them, became even richer. But the structural break mattered. It restored competition to a market that had been closed. It created the conditions that allowed independent companies to survive. It sent a message, however imperfect in execution, that the concentration of infrastructure in private hands has limits, and that those limits are enforceable. We are at the beginning of that reckoning again. The EU's Digital Markets Act, which came into full effect in 2024, has already forced Apple to allow third-party app stores in Europe, a crack in a walled garden that Apple's lawyers spent years insisting was architecturally impossible. The DOJ's antitrust case against Google's search monopoly produced a federal judge's ruling in 2024 that Google had illegally maintained its dominance in the search market. It is the most significant antitrust decision against a tech company in a quarter century. The remedy has not yet been determined. The fight over what happens next is the most consequential regulatory battle of this decade. At the state level, attorneys general from both parties have filed suits targeting platform monopolies in ways that sidestep the zero-price problem entirely, arguing harm in terms of data, privacy, and the distortion of democratic information flows. The legal language is being rebuilt, slowly and imperfectly, for a world the Sherman Act never imagined. And outside the courtroom, something older is happening. The trustbusters of the original Gilded Age were not primarily lawyers, they were journalists. Ida Tarbell spent years inside Standard Oil's records before she published The History of the Standard Oil Company in 1904. The series did not just inform the public, it changed the political weather. It made antitrust enforcement possible by making the alternative intolerable to a citizenry that finally understood what had been built around them. That work is happening again in documentaries, in investigative reporting, in the growing refusal of a generation that grew up inside the algorithm to pretend the trade was ever fair. You are part of that. The first act of resistance is the one you are completing right now, understanding the infrastructure, knowing whose tracks you are riding on, seeing the refinery for what it is. The new empire is real, it is powerful, and it has had a 30-year head start. But empires that depend on the consent of the people they extract from have one structural vulnerability. They require you to keep not noticing, stop. Look at the pipeline running through your pocket and decide what you owe it. If this changed the way you think about who actually holds power in the modern economy, and I mean actually changed it, not just confirmed what you already suspected, hit the like button. It helps this reach people who need to hear it, and frankly, it helps me keep making videos that do not pull their punches. Subscribe if you want more of this. We cover economic power, the hidden mechanics of money, and the structural forces shaping your financial life, without the usual noise.